Hey, welcome to Brighter Rays. This week we're looking at Genesis 46, 1 through 34 today. And, throughout this whole week, actually. And I called this study for the week, Keepers of Livestock, which is based on the fact that Joseph tells his brothers to say that you are keepers of livestock when you go meet the Pharaoh. And we'll see how all that plays in as we go through this study. But today we're going to continue our study of the life of Joseph in Genesis chapter 46. Now, last time we heard the story of how Joseph and his brothers finally reunited as brothers. They're back together again. And Joseph could not restrain himself any longer. His emotions had overwhelmed him, and he revealed who he is to his brothers. That he was indeed Joseph. After some convincing, their eyes were opened and they rejoiced together. And the 12 brothers, being reunited again, were happy. Everything was good. The brothers were fitted with wagons and provisions to go back to the land of Canaan to retrieve their father and to bring him into Egypt. Now we heard the words of Jacob as he learned of the news that his son, his favorite son, was still alive. And he was well. And he's actually, in fact, ruler of all of Egypt. And he says, I will go and see him before I die. Since we started the study of Genesis, we have been tracing several themes that have been woven into the fabric of this book. We began with the contrast between good and evil. We have followed that thread into this story here of Joseph. Starting way back in the beginning of Genesis, we followed that thread of promise. In Genesis chapter 3, we had the promise of the offspring of the woman that would crush the head of the serpent. Well, that thread also made its way into this story, and the promise of that one that would come through the offspring of the woman. We've been tracing that line all the way. Now, it has also grabbed Abraham as we passed through his time, and then it finally came into Joseph's period of time. Now, in Genesis chapter 12, God promised Abraham that his descendants would become a great nation. In Genesis chapter 15, God promised that Abraham's offspring would be sojourners in a land that was not theirs, and they would be servants there. And also that they would be afflicted for 400 years. In later books of the Bible, Egypt would become a name that would represent evil, the evil of the world. But it would be there in Egypt, in the land of oppression, that God would make Abraham's offspring into a mighty nation. The reunion we read about last time was only the first stage in a great reunion, a greater reunion. God planned to have not just a temporary reuniting of his sons of Israel, but the whole family, all of the descendants of Jacob. They would move permanently to Egypt. Jacob would see his son again. And that would have to happen because the sun, moon, and stars would have to bow down to Joseph, just as God had said. So we find here three main sections in the chapter before us today. First, we have the journey of Israel into Egypt in verses 1 through 5. And then the next and largest section of this passage is the family record in verses 6 through 27. And at the end of the chapter, in verses 28 through 34, we find father and son together again, and we hear Joseph's plan concerning his family. So come back next time, and we'll begin our study in verses 1 through 5, and we'll see how Israel finally makes it into the land of Egypt.